It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast as we connect you to the very best in real estate information right across Australia. We do it 7 days a week because we talk to all of the real estate experts. You don't have to do that, of course, and you can stream us at any time on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcast and Amazon. Working week starting to go by pretty fast up to a Thursday morning, February the 13th. And you know, one of the many things that I discover in this role is the diverse and different suburbs that are across Australia. And many of these suburbs I've never heard of before, and maybe you're the same. For example, if I said to you the suburb of Alphington, would you know where that is? Because Alphington is in the news as reported by Domain. This suburb has defied Melbourne's overall market slowdown, recording an impressive 19.7% surge in median house prices, and that is over the past year, adding more than 350k in value. This thriving suburb now boasts a median price of 1.777 million and change, driven by strong demand for quality homes. It is transformed from a lesser-known area into a competitive property hotspot. And this is the sort of suburb that we get to talk about on the Real Estate Breakfast, the lesser-known one. So if there is a lesser-known suburb you think we should be talking about, let us know. You know the email address. It is myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. So from Victoria, let's right now go to Queensland and catch up with Nick Buick from the Onsite manager. And good morning to you, Nick. First off, is there any suburb in Brisbane that is maybe a little less known to our listeners this morning?
I think every suburb's sort of pretty well known these days, but I always look for suburbs when I'm buying property that promise strong capital growth that hasn't yet been realised. For instance, one of the properties I bought was in Hendra, which it's not exactly a lesser known suburb. It's got a deadly virus named after it, but it's about 6 k's out of the city, and it was predominantly a horse racing suburb. All of the houses were horse stables, and they just stored race horses there. And then I saw there was a DA going in to refurbish the race courses and move all of those stables infield, which meant that suddenly all those stables were gone. They were getting demolished, and there was a lot of land opening up, and we did really well out of that property. Just by looking for those sort of potentials.
Yeah, that's the way. You've just got to look at those DAs because often there is a waterfall effect. Now, let's talk about Queensland's management rights. What does set Queensland's management rights apart from those in the southern states, with key legislative differences shaping how agreements are structured and operated? Understanding these variations, of course, is very crucial for investors and operators. So, Nick, how do these regulations impact profitability, contract terms, and day-to-day management across different states in Australia? I know that's a big question for you.
It is, but it's something we're pretty savvy with here. There's a huge difference between legislation. The main difference would be the agreement terms. So in Queensland, for sort of long stay, that agreement term can be around 10 years, and for holiday properties it can be up to 25 years. So that's a very long contract term. So that's a management contract term for that building. In New South Wales and Victoria, they don't have those sorts of terms. So their maximums are like 3 years or 5 years. So a much shorter contract term. Obviously, when you're selling management rights, and these things can be worth millions of dollars, it's a lot harder to attract that sort of purchase price on a management rights if your agreement term's only 3 years. There's a whole lot less certainty there. There just aren't as many of them in the southern states as there are in Queensland. We have over 3,500 management rights agreements in Queensland. There's vastly less than that in the southern states.
Yeah, and when it does come to management rights in Australia, each state has its own approach, but none are without criticism, I think it's fair to say. So what are the key concerns surrounding Queensland's model, and how do the management rights structures in New South Wales and Victoria compare? In other words, are there lessons to be learnt from each system for better outcomes?
Most definitely, yeah. So in Queensland, we do have very long agreement terms here, as I said, potentially up to 25 years. The trade-off for such a long agreement term is that there's a lot of checks and balances there. Basically, if you're the facility manager in Queensland, the holder of the management rights, you're not allowed to be on the body corporate committee as a committee member, even if you're a lot owner in that scheme, which most on-site managers are. That's not the case in New South Wales and Victoria. You can sit on the committee. You can also be the strata manager in New South Wales. So a strata manager differs from an on-site manager. The strata manager sort of guides the body corporate committee in their meetings and stuff. So you've got a situation in the southern states where the strata manager can also sit on the committee and can also be the facility manager and the letting agent of the building. So they have a lot more purview over the operations of that building, and can even be in a situation where they're voting on the renewal of their own agreement. In Queensland, that's just not the case. If you're the building manager, the facility manager, you're not allowed to be on the committee, and you're not allowed to be a strata manager either.
All right, we are talking management rights with Nick this morning. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation looking at lot owners, tenants, and also managers. We'll do that next.
Get insider tips from industry professionals and level up your real estate game by unlocking the secrets of successful real estate transactions.
Yeah, and you're in a very interesting market there, particularly price point, because it goes anywhere between probably around that 800K up to 2 million, maybe with the apartments. And then you've got the super luxury between $10 and $15 million properties.
We do. We're very unique in that we've got a very interesting, a wide range of properties. I think units, we've even had some units in Drummoyne on the water with the harbour bridge views and everything. They can, off the plan and fully finished turnkey are getting, into the 10 million. So that's breaking new ground at the moment. And then, the records for your waterfront mansions are around that $15 million mark. Look at a Rod Point, for instance. You've got a very big mix of, majority of it around 370 to 400 square metres, so smaller block homes. And then the other half of Rod Point sit on like 600 to 800 square metre blocks that are duplex sites.
Let's fuel your passion for property together. Join us, along with our industry experts, to help inspire and inform your next real estate decision.
And it is a Real Estate Thursday, and once again we are talking management rights with Nick Buick from the Onsite Manager in Brisbane. And Nick, I want to sort of drill down on, when it comes to these management rights in Australia, which model delivers the best outcomes for all stakeholders? Like, you've got your lot owners, you've got your tenants, you've got your managers, and with different structures in place, from long-term agreements like you've talked about to committee-managed models, which approach ensures, do you think, the best balance of service quality, also that profitability, which is key? And the other big component to this is community harmony.
The objective with management rights is, to deliver the best outcomes for the lot owners in the scheme and the people living in that building. That's what it's all about. There are criticisms levelled at the Queensland model, namely that it's organised corruption, because someone can buy a 25-year management agreement and then there's very little, or it is difficult to oust that person. Similarly, in New South Wales, there's criticisms, and we've seen them play out, where you can have a lot of control handed over to one individual of a scheme. So even though they may not have that contract for as long, they have a lot more control over what's going on in that scheme. To me, I think the Queensland model works better because the manager is a lot owner in the scheme as well. They have a long-term interest in ensuring that scheme is well run because it's tied up to it for 25 years as well. So it's in their interest to make sure that scheme's running well, that building's looked after. A lot of building maintenance schedules can run for decades. Like your paint schedule, for instance, that's a 10-year term there on the paint schedule. You have to paint every 10 years. You have to do certain things between those 10 years to maintain your paint's warranty. If you're managing a facility for 3 years, that sort of long-term maintenance scheduling isn't really as much of a concern for you. So we have in Queensland basically a vested interest in making sure those buildings are well run. And that obviously delivers the best outcomes for the lot owners in the scheme. And also because the manager is there for the long game in Queensland, they'll go the extra mile. And that's been proven. To work out a manager's salary, you do what's called a time and motion study. And in 80% of those time and motion studies that have been, I believe it was 2003, looking at the data here, they were found that the managers were doing more work than they were being paid for. So essentially, lot owners are getting value for money because the manager, again, has a long-term interest in that building.
Yeah, so if you're going into this, you've got to sort of be thinking long-term all the way. Now, a little bit of a point here, and that is, what is preventing the successful Queensland management rights model from being adopted in the southern states? Because with its long-term agreements that you're talking about and proven benefits for managers and stakeholders, why hasn't Victoria and New South Wales followed suit? I know that there are probably these legislative barriers, market dynamics, of course, and industry resistance. So talk to that if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Well, I guess the Queensland model was born out of the Gold Coast, and it happened quite organically. It was, the Gold Coast was this is sort of, 40, 50 years ago. The Gold Coast was a lot of little holiday properties, and people needed somewhere to, someone to look after their holiday property when they weren't there. Sort of on-site managers were born. So that's how it came about in Queensland. And in New South Wales and Victoria, we've had sort of legislation put in place that essentially makes that impossible. You've got very, very short-term contract periods. And as I said, you've also got no protections against a strata manager also sitting on the committee and doing all those other things. But for New South Wales and Victoria, you'd have to change that legislation. And there are vested interests down there that don't want that to happen, namely the strata management companies themselves, because they currently hold these facility management agreements. And if we were to change the model in those states to similar to Queensland, obviously they would lose those quite lucrative facility management agreements. So that's probably the biggest hurdle. There was a lot of push earlier, like a couple of years ago, for the legislation to be changed in Queensland to follow the New South Wales model. And the people leading that charge, of course, were the same strata managers from down south that would love to grab those facility agreements in Queensland as well. So the main one, I guess, is, the lobby groups from the strata industry itself and the legislation that's in place in those southern states.
I said at the start, one of the great things with this job is finding out all about these different suburbs around the country. It's also finding out about subjects like what you're doing, these management rights, because it's a real educational piece that we've been doing with you for months now. I know that there's some great feedback that's coming through. So, thanks once again for sort of breaking that down. I, for one, knew nothing about the difference between Queensland and New South Wales. So you've sort of shined the light, as it were, just to do this educational piece with us. And once again, thanks for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast. Nick, enjoy your Thursday.
I will. Thanks a lot for having us, Craig. All the best.
Ready to take your real estate knowledge to the next level? So are we.
I am a ring-in. Look, I was a police officer for 23 years until I found real estate, and now real estate has been my passion right here in Townsville for 13 years.
How much of that skill base of being a police officer for all of those years have transferred into real estate?
Firstly, we need to be able to communicate and talk to people at a range of depth and relating to different people from different backgrounds and those who are under pressure and those who are in a place of joy and growth. But secondly, when we know about real estate being a lot about data mining and data hunting, no one can stalk someone better than a police officer.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.